So I want to talk about something actually quite practical regarding this matter of service and taking care of customers, and you know communicating the quality of an experience, and really why that has become a form of currency in our industry, certainly. So the loose title was the marketing plan, right? The soul behind the script. I think what's really unique about the place that our industry is at right now is that we've made a pretty tectonic transition from one in which our value to the market has been primarily determined by our technical expertise to one in which now our market value is very much defined by the ways in which we communicate our experiences and the strength of our brand message, all of which kind of fall under the umbrella of something that the Power Selling Pros team has talked about, which is how do you make your clients feel, right? What is the emotional output that you're trying to generate from that customer interaction process? So I'd like to ask a couple of questions, and I would encourage you to think about them after we're finished. Two questions, right? Number one, I have to move my little chat bar here because it's kind of jamming up my vibe. Has your company attempted to define a brand story that describes its value proposition? Number one, if you asked all the people that work in your business, be it a small company or a larger firm, has your company attempted to define a brand story? Do you know what story your company is trying to tell? The answer to that question is important because, if the answer obviously is no, then what results from that is a very fragmented relationship with your clients, such that one individual who's a frontline employee may have one interpretation of what your company stands for. Meanwhile, another frontline employee may have a completely different definition or understanding or even application of what your company and what your brand stands for. Great brands within a company not only create great teamwork and a great culture, but they manifest themselves in the ways in which you interact at various client touch points. Obviously, the goal is consistency, and clearly the outcome of that consistency is a particular kind of relationship between you and your customers. And then second, and this is a challenging question, I think, for any organization, but in particular the larger firms, how confident are you that people across your organization can tell your brand story accurately and consistently? If, for the sake of discussion, we took 10 employees from the same company, put them into different spaces, and asked them to all tell the brand story, where would your level of confidence be that you're going to get the same output, generally speaking? If they're all telling the same story, you've got the basis for a fantastic client interaction, be it at the service, sales, installation, or CSR level. If you have a fragmented series of answers, then that's the opportunity to create some brand unity and to start focusing your energies and efforts on what the company really does stand for. The practical application, of course, is that we need customers that are not simply transactional. And the statistic that was on the previous slide clearly indicates that if you have a negative experience with a particular company or a particular brand, the likelihood of you going back to that is very low. So I would encourage you to think about changing your relationships, and in particular, the ways in which you coach your teams. Ask questions, first of all, to help understand the knowledge gaps among your team members. Not everybody is going to have the same understanding of your company, from its foundation to its current iteration. If you were to ask them again, what do we stand for, you'll quickly understand that there are some important gaps that need to be filled. Second, one size fits all, and I think this is why the Power Selling Pros team guys have been so instrumental in this series of webinars. Customizing your training based on your team feedback and market feedback gives you a nimbleness and a market relevance that a cookie cutter out of the box training program doesn't support. So customizing your training means your training with your team should reflect the goals that you're trying to accomplish, as well as the feedback you're gaining from your clients. And third and finally, you want confident service technicians, right? And you want them to feel that they can serve customers and overserve the customers in the best interest of the experience you're trying to create. And so if you've listened to Erica or Steve or Brendan, I think one of the things that I've heard at least is that it's one thing to tell somebody what to say, and that's very easy to do. The more complicated opportunity and challenge is to start teaching them how to make people feel. And I apologize for the typo there. And those are two very different ways of thinking about training people. If you look at retention, and if you look at the retention rates among people that kind of get out of the box trainings, there's a reason to have to keep going back and back and back and back, because there's not necessarily an experience-based underpinning. When you hear Erica talk about the framework for excellence, right? There's a reason that that makes sense. And it's because it's a philosophical or it's an experience-driven basis from which the brand then can grow. Ostensibly, this is a presentation about service techs, but beyond that, and perhaps in a more lasting manner, this is also a presentation about how you embed yourself in your clients' lives, how your brand embeds itself in your clients' lives, so that they move from being a transactional type of client to one with sustainable and most importantly, sustainable revenue interests for you and your team. So I'd say it's time to step back and think about how your company is telling its brand story, what your understanding of that story is, how the market is responding to it, and how it changes the way you coach your people.